Argon 6 was a graveyard with a sky. Clouds hung low and thick, smearing the horizon with toxic yellow smog. The air buzzed with radiation. The winds never whispered. They screamed, dragging dust and echoes through rusted steel corridors of the mining colony below. What once housed 20,000 Earth settlers now limped along with less than 200 workers, most of them prisoners of debt. At 4:32 planetary time, the sky cracked open. From orbit, 30 Dominion drop pods hissed down in coordinated silence, their black holes glowing like meteors tearing across the clouds. The ground beneath the colony trembled, not with fear, not yet, but with a cold certainty of precision. The pods landed with thunder, hydraulics hissing, and in a ballet of death, the Crimson Talon, the Dominion's elite extraction unit, deployed. No warning, no demands, just entry, just violence. Doors burst, walls crumbled. Men and women barely had time to scream before energy pikes cut through them like light through mist. The Dominion soldiers didn't speak. They didn't shout. Their armor was bone-white and faceless, like walking tombstones. Commander VRYZ, leader of the Talon, moved like a machine, 6'8", exosuit enhanced, his visor constantly calculating movement, heartbeats, trajectories. His voice came through the comms in flat, sterile tones. Take specimens. Full scan. Eliminate resistance. Prioritize Earthborn miners. Roger. Commander, his lieutenant crackled. One has been found. Female. Human. Age range, 5 to 8. Isolated. Secure and extract. No blemish. They pay more for clean. Across the rubble-strewn street, deep in the ruins of a half-collapsed shelter, Ava Reeves sat with her knees tucked to her chest. 6 years old. Brown hair tied in twin braids. Eyes like ice. Calm. Unblinking. She'd watched the sky split. She saw the pods descend. She didn't run. She didn't cry. When the Dominion soldier burst in, plasma rifle rays, his breath caught in his throat. This was no ordinary child. She looked at him. Right through him. Then she spoke, softly. You should leave. Now. The soldier froze. Something crawled beneath his skin. But training kicked in. He activated the restraint cuff. The metal claws clicked around Ava's small wrist with a cool hiss. He barely touched her before she whispered again. My daddy's coming. 30 minutes later. Dominion dropship Fang 12. Upper atmosphere. Commander VRYZ paced before the secured holding cell, arms crossed, visor flickering with data. The girl sat inside, calm as still water. No crying, no screaming, no panic. She stared at him with the quiet intensity of someone far older than her years. The officer beside him chuckled. She's just some backwater brat. Soft earthling, probably feral. VRYZ said nothing. Instead, he turned to the biometric scan. Subject, AVA Reeve. DNA match, Chief Petty Officer James Reeve. Status, missing in action, classified, level Omega. Affiliation, Navy SEAL, Ghost Team. The console beeped once, then froze, then displayed a warning in blood-red text. If you see this file, you're already dead. VRYZ recoiled. He slammed the emergency intercom. Get me General Zareth. Now. Dominion warship, Alpha Dreadnought, orbit of Argon 6. General Zareth stood 9 feet tall, skin like obsidian, eyes glowing like dying suns. He'd conquered 53 worlds, executed emperors with his own claws, and bathed in the lava rivers of Vortex 9. He feared nothing. Until now, the hologram of Commander VRYZ crackled to life in the war room. General VRYZ said, voice shaky, we secured an earthling child. Name, Ava Reeve. She's... He didn't finish. Zareth's expression curdled. His jaw clenched. He crossed the room in 4 great strides and smashed his gauntlet into the side of the console. The metal shattered like glass. Silence followed. Then he leaned close to the screen, eyes wide. You idiot! You stole a Navy SEAL's child. Behind him, several bridge officers turned pale. One vomited. A technician collapsed in his chair, muttering prayers in dead languages. General, VRYZ said, confused, what's one human? Zareth roared, voice shaking the ship's hull. Not a human. That human. You took the daughter of James Reeve. Ghost team. His not listed as MIA because he's dead. His listed because he's forgotten. Because no galaxy is safe if it's active. The war room lights flickered. Somewhere deep in the ship, systems rebooted. Emergency subroutines ran diagnostics on nothing. Because something else had entered the grid. Something unseen. Back on the dropship, VRYZ turned slowly toward the holding cell. Ava now stood, her hands behind her back, her eyes calm, and then she smiled. It wasn't a child's smile. It was his smile. You made a big mistake. Alarms erupted. The dropship shook violently. One of the guards flew across the cabin, neck twisting with a snap. The other drew his rifle. Too late. The bulkhead behind him caved inward, as if crushed by an invisible fist. The cabin depressurized. Screams. Metal buckling. Lights dimming. And then, he was there. A single figure in matte black armor dropped through the ceiling, silent as a shadow. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Knives flashed in both hands. They moved faster than Dominion eyes could track. Spines were slit. Helmets cracked. Blood sprayed across the white interior like red poetry. Commander VRYZ raised his weapon. Too slow. Reeve caught his wrist, twisted it with mechanical force, and drove a blade into his thigh. VRYZ screamed, but Reeve wasn't done. He leaned close. You touched my daughter. He drove the second blade through VRYZ's throat. Not clean. Not fast. Personal. Final scene. Fire in the sky. The Dominion warship Alpha Dreadnought watched from orbit as one of its dropships spun wildly out of control, trailing smoke and debris, before exploding in midday. A single escape pod detached moments before, burning like a meteor as it descended back to Argon 6. Inside, a man and a girl. The pod landed with a seismic thud, crushing a Dominion scout outpost on impact. When the dust cleared, James Reeve stepped out of the flames with Ava on his shoulder. He looked to the stars, at the fleet above. He didn't shout. He didn't raise a weapon. He just stayed. And in every Dominion heart aboard that ship, a single, ancient emotion awakened. Dread. The war room of the Alpha Dreadnought pulsed with quiet that wasn't peace. It was a silence that waited to scream. Holographic war maps floated in the center, each one lined with data feed from dozens of Dominion sectors, yet none dared override the image in the middle. A security feed showing a young Earth girl sitting alone in a stasis cell, legs crossed, hands folded in her lap, a child's gaze too calm to be innocent. Her name was Ava Reeve. General Zara stood before it, silent, unmoving, his breathing sharp, metallic beneath his command helm. Even his lieutenants, battle-hardened through centuries of blood-soaked conquest, gave him distance. They'd never seen the general afraid. Not when the Vorse rebellion turned their war moons against him. Not when the Krillin wormships blackened the stars over Corin 5. But now, he stood still, jaw tight, eyes like frozen suns, staring at a 6-year-old girl in chains. The feed flickered. Static crawled across her image, and in that white noise, a voice barely perceptible whispered something into the comnet. An old Earth phrase, translated into High Dominion, just 3 words, but enough to bring the entire bridge to a crawl. His in motion. A technician at the forward console swallowed hard. His hands hovered over the data stream, unable to move. Another officer, a junior tactician barely out of his breeding clone cycle, scoffed weakly. Sir, respectfully, she's just a child. What could one Earthling possibly? Silence. Zareth growled, the word like gravel grinding in a storm. His fist struck the metal console, cracking the alloy like glass. You fools have no idea what you've done. He pointed to the hologram. That child is a daughter of James Reeve. The room shuddered, not from impact, but from understanding. One name, no rank, no need, just James Reeve. Eyes widened. Some mouths parted, words unable to form. Even the war-born officers, trained in the ancient vaults of Sword Prime, took a step back. James Reeve, the Phantom of Vega Drift, the butcher of Nikos V, the man whose classified service record had more redacted lines than visible ones. A Navy SEAL from the vanished Earth Military Corps, long presumed dead, and later presumed myth, except to the people who'd fought him. or survived him. All 5 of them. Pull the fleet back, Zareth barked. Evacuate the child. Return her to Argon 6. Do it now, or you'll doom us all. But General, our protocols. He doesn't care about your protocols. They moved, scrambling at terminals, issuing recall commands, rerouting dropships mid-orbit. Yet every order felt too late. Every second dragged like fate. On the 3rd deck of the Alpha Dreadnought, Commander VYZ watched his own reflection flicker in the darkened viewport, a storm in his eyes. His arms still ached from where the Earthling had stabbed him during extraction, a move he dismissed as nothing more than animal instinct. But now, the sting in his side felt like prophecy. He turned back to the stasis cell. Ava still sat there, still quiet, still waiting. "Where is he?" he muttered under his breath. A small smile touched her lips. "Closer than you think." An alarm shrieked. Power across deck C-17 cut to black. Then D-22. Then E-9. One after another, like dominoes, the lights across the dreadnought blinked out in perfect sequence. Emergency lights flicked on, pulsing red. Ventilation systems began cycling in reverse, drawing air inward instead of out. Gravity fluctuated for 1.3 seconds, just enough to disorient. Then came the scream. It cut through the intercom, not human, not alien, just raw. A wet, cracking scream that came from deep within the hull. Cameras across the corridor feed began to die, one by one, until only one lens remained online, positioned at the far end of Corridor 41A. The image was simple, a dark hallway, flickering lights, blood smeared along the walls in chaotic handprints. Then a shape emerged, not running, walking, casual, intentional, like death had no schedule because it didn't need one. The black-armored figure was human in outline, but there was nothing human in the way it moved. No wasted motion, no stumble, every step measured. His suit didn't reflect light, it drank it. The helmet was featureless. The weapons, dual combat blades, glinted red as if it already tasted Dominion blood. The AI tried to scan his heat signature. It found none. Tried to read his DNA. Blank. Tried to identify threat level. The screen shattered. On the feed, the figure paused at the camera. Slowly, deliberately, he looked up into the lens. No words, just presence. The signal cut. Seal the bridge. Zareth roared. "He's aboard! Do not let him reach the core." But James Reeve wasn't coming for the core. He was coming for his daughter. Commander VRYZ ran. Through emergency doors. Down access shafts. He called for escort teams. None responded. Every hall he passed through had bodies. Dozens. Torn open. Not burned. Cut. Dominion armor peeled open like cheap fruit cans. Some of the wounds were surgical, almost merciful. Others were messages. One body had no eyes, only a knife lodged in its throat with a note. "Next time, don't touch children." The doors to the detention wing opened for VRYZ with a sluggish grind. He turned the corner and stopped cold. The guards posted at Ava's cell were already dead. One had been stuffed headfirst into a ceiling vent. The other was still twitching, pinned to the wall by his own spinal cord, which had been removed and woven through his chest. Ava stood beside her father, unchained, unharmed. Reeve knelt beside her, checked her hands, her face, nodded once. She smiled and hugged him tightly. For that one moment, the war disappeared. Time bent around them. There was no fire, no blood, no terror. Just a father and his daughter. Then Reeve turned to VRYZ. The commander drew his blade and lunged. Reeve didn't move. He waited. One heartbeat. Then his hand shot out like a viper. He caught VRYZ's wrist mid-strike, twisted, shattered bone. VRYZ screamed and dropped to one knee. Reeve slammed his foot into the commander's chest, sending him skidding across the floor in a heap. "Mercy!" VRYZ gasped. "Please." "You didn't ask her for mercy." With one smooth motion, Reeve stepped forward and drove a blade through VRYZ's mouth, up through his skull. No sound, no flare of light, just stillness. He turned to Ava. "Close your eyes." She did. Behind them, Reeve planted a device on the wall, a small, black hexagon with a pulsing core. Then he took her hand, and they walked out. 2 minutes later, the lower decks of the Ultra Dreadnought detonated in a chain of precise explosions. Not enough to destroy the ship. That wasn't the point. He didn't want destruction. He wanted fear. As the fire spread and evacuation protocols failed, Dominion officers screamed for backup, for extraction, for reason. But there was no answer. Only one message repeated through every Dominion frequency, over and over, broadcasting in every tongue. You took what I love. Now I take what you fear. General Zareth watched it all from the bridge as the smoke crawled up the data feed, and his empire began to die, not in flame, but in silence. He backed away from the console, every command stuck in his throat, because James Reeve was aboard, and he was only getting started. Smoke still clung to the corridors of the Ultra Dreadnought, coiling through the vents like a living thing. The lower decks were blacked out, corpses strewn across scorched metal, limbs severed, visors cracked, blood pooling in mechanical grooves like dark rivers. Fire suppression systems hissed overhead, trying in vain to reclaim order. But there was no order now. There was only one man, and the Dominion still hadn't understood what he was. James Reeve moved through the wreckage in silence, his daughter close behind him, her small hand wrapped in the armor plate of his left gauntlet. She didn't cry, didn't flinch. The man beside her wasn't just her father. He was gravity. She orbited him without fear. Above them, Dominion forces scrambled. Panic had spread like infection. Entire squads refused deployment. Orders were delayed, then overridden, then ignored. Veterans who'd carved through civil wars on half a dozen moons stood in full battle gear and trembled. Even the elite Red Halo unit, famed for its cruelty on the ice plains of Borthus, huddled in a sealed chamber on Deck 12, arguing whether to fight or flee. They had every weapon, every advantage, and yet none of it mattered, because James Reeve wasn't a man you hunted. He was a man you ran from. In the main bridge of the Ultha, General Zareth watched security feeds dissolve into static, one by one, like dying stars. Whole wings of the ship were now dark, cut off from power, communication severed. Internal AI refused to reroute access. Something, or someone, had infected the command systems. He gritted his jagged teeth. Find him. Sir, one officer muttered, his voice cracking. We've lost 14 squads. 2 were shredded. No projectile damage, just bladed trauma. It's like he wants to get close. Zareth stared at the man like he was already dead. He does. He turned to his second-in-command, a brutal-looking creature with plated skin and a titanium jaw. Unleash the Null Pack. The room fell silent. The Null Pack wasn't a strike team. It wasn't even Dominion military. It was a containment measure. 5 genetically corrupted assassins, exiled for crimes that couldn't be classified, only buried. Each one was surgically altered, unstable, and kept in cryosuspension beneath the main reactor. They weren't meant to win wars. They were meant to erase mistakes. The order was sent. Deep in the ship's underdeck, alarms pulsed at an unnatural frequency. Steel cages hissed open, fog spilling into the chamber like breath. The lights flickered under strobe conditions as 5 figures stepped out, each one taller than a human, bone-jointed and covered in pale, ruined flesh. No eyes, no words, only movement. The pack didn't wait for instructions. They didn't need to. They smelled him. Elsewhere, Reeve paused in a corridor outside the ship's forward landing bay. He had reached the extraction zone. A sleek shuttle waited beyond the bulkhead. The door slid open at his retinal scan. He'd already hacked their gate codes. Of course he had. He turned to Ava. You remember the drill. She nodded. Stay with the ship. No matter what. Don't open the ramp for anyone else. He handed her a small square of metal, no bigger than a coin. If they breach the bay, press this. Don't look back. Will it hurt? She asked softly. Not for you, he said. She walked into the shuttle, calm, focused, already sealing the hatch. Then he toned, and the last ounce of gentleness left his face. 3 of the Null Pack were already in the corridor behind him. Fast, silent, barefoot. They moved like spiders in shadows, sliding down walls, their blades fused to bone, their mouths sealed shut with surgical thread. The first one lunged forward, claws extended, aiming for his jugular. Reeve didn't retreat. He met the charge. His blade arced upward and cleaved through the creature's wrist in mid-strike, spinning with his body to slam an elbow into the beast's throat. A sickening crunch. Bone splinters erupted through flesh. The assassin twitched violently. Then Reeve snapped its neck and launched the corpse into the second. The third circled wide, leaping to the ceiling and sprinting upside down across the steel. Its claws clicked like knives against metal. Reeve raised his pistol, one of Earth's old-style coil guns, custom-modified. One shot. The assassin dropped in 2 pieces. The second rose, bleeding black fluid from its chest, and let out a shriek that made nearby circuitry fry just from the frequency. Reeve walked straight into it, blade spinning low, cutting its knees out, then pivoted and brought his boot down on the back of its skull. A sickening crack. Silence. 3 down. 2 remained. The last one came together, faster, smarter, one lunging to grapple, the other sliding behind, aiming to sever the spinal cord. But Reeve had trained in close-quarters nightmare scenarios. His body reacted before thought. He flipped forward, landed behind them, and stabbed both in the back simultaneously, twin blades puncturing through spine and lung. They shrieked in unison, tried to spin, but he twisted the hilts and ripped them free in a spray of black bile. The corridor was now still. 5 bodies. 15 seconds. He didn't even look back. In the control room, Zareth watched the feed silently, then crushed his data console with his bare hand. All units, fall back to orbital perimeter. I want all warships repositioned. Lock down the planet. A technician toned. Sir, do you want us to recapture the girl? Zareth didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on the man on screen, walking calmly through smoke and blood, as if the warship belonged to him now. No, the general said, finally, don't recapture her. Don't go near her. He leaned forward. Pray she leaves. Down in the bay, the shuttle powered to life. Inside, Ava sat quietly, watching the ram through a narrow viewport. And then he returned. James Reeve stepped into the ship without a word. Blood on his armor. Scratches on his mask, but no wounds. None that mattered. She smiled. You're late, she whispered. Traffic, he replied. The shuttle lifted, slicing upward through the crumbling hangar bay as Dominion forces scrambled beneath. Automated turrets tried to lock on, but their targeting systems were still offline. Reeve's virus had eaten their firmware an hour ago. As the ship punched through the atmosphere, Dominion warships locked targeting solutions. But none fired. Not one. Because they knew. Every admiral aboard those ships had reviewed the file. SEAL Class Omega-7. The Ghost Protocol. James Reeve. There was a note in that file, right at the top. Engagement is not recommended. If Reeve initiates recovery protocol, avoid escalation. No capture attempts. If you fail to comply, you may survive. Your world will not. Aboard the shuttle, Ava leaned against her father's side. He opened a small compartment above his seat and pulled out a worn photo, faded, crumpled, nearly torn in half. It showed a woman with a kind smile, standing beside a younger Reeve, holding a newborn Ava. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. She reached up and touched his faceplate gently. They'll come again. He nodded once. They always do. Then he whispered, not to her, but to the stars. I hope they bring more. Behind them, orbit burned, and war began to whisper again. The shuttle knifed through the stars at subwarp, slipping beneath Dominion's satellite webs like a ghost in the current. No pings, no locks, no trace. James Reeve's fingers danced across the ancient control panel with inhuman precision, rerouting signal reflections, ghost mirroring thermal trails, and cycling every 2 seconds through classified Earth stealth protocols long thought extinct. Behind him, Ava slept curled in the co-pilot seat, wrapped in the cloak he'd stolen from a fallen Dominion captain. Her breath was steady, peaceful. Reeve had made a habit of war, but she was the only reason he remembered peace. Alarms ticked softly, proximity scans picking up a debris field 12 clicks ahead. Not natural, not chaotic, too clean. Something had scrubbed this battlefield like a forensic artist. Hundreds of destroyed vessels floated there, gutted but arranged, all turned outward, like they were trying to escape something at the center. Reeve frowned behind his visor. He didn't like traps. But this was the only vector out of Dominion space that didn't have a dreadnought waiting at the end of it. He thumbed the throttle. The shuttle coasted in. The debris field thickened. Charred wreckage spun in slow arcs. Earth ships, Dominion war cruisers, Vorse battle rams, even a Zelen Leviathan class, cracked clean in half like a bone under pressure. And at the center, silence, then the scream. Not audio, not mechanical, not even digital. It was psychic, a frequency that bypassed ears and drilled straight into the base of Reeve's skull like a parasite clawing through a coffin lid. He staggered, just slightly, his HUD blinked static, then cleared out a new contact registered small, fast, and coming straight for him. Reeve turned to the cockpit. Ava, strap in. Eyes closed. She didn't argue. He hit the thrusters, flipped the shuttle vertical, just as something long, black, and alive tore past the viewport like a flash of nightmare. It circled back, faster than light should allow. Not Dominion, not VOISK.NO signature. No name. His hands moved on instinct. He fired countermeasures, flays, decoys. Useless. Whatever it was ignored them. It wasn't chasing heat. It was hunting him. And it had found him. The impact was like a god's hammer. The shuttle spun, slammed sideways into a drifting freighter husk, bounced off into the dark. Reeve fought the yoke, stabilizers burning out in protest. Hull pressure climbed. Then it hit again this time. It pierced. The outer wing shredded, venting atmosphere in a flash-freeze scream. Lights died. Systems went dark. He triggered emergency protocols, sealed Ava's seat in a survival pod manually, and turned toward the breach. A hiss behind him, the hull opened like paper, and it stepped through. The creature was tall, no armor, just obsidian skin threaded with pulsing red veins that blinked like dying stars. No eyes, no mouth. Its body shimmered in and out of physical form, like it was half-dream, and yet when it moved, the floor dented beneath its feet. Reeve raised his rifle. 5.3 rounds struck it in the chest. Nothing.it didn't even flinch. Then it was on him. It moved like oil and bone, twisting into impossible shapes, claws raking for his head. Reeve ducked, slammed the butt of his rifle into its ribs, and felt it snap something. It shrieked, this time, audibly, a sound like static being tortured. He used the moment to pull his combat blade and slash low. The blade connected. Black ichor sprayed across the cabin wall. The thing reeled back, snarled. Then it spoke, not in voice that I in memory, but a whisper crawled into his mind. Images, sounds, words that weren't his. A Dominion chamber. A ritual. A corpse. His corpse. No, a clone. One of hundreds. The creature knew him that IT had been made for him. Then he realized. This wasn't a trap. This was a message Dominion High Command hadn't just unleashed an assassin. They had created a counterforce, a psychic mimic born from the trauma of every soldier who ever feared James Reeve. It had no name, because it was his name. He roared, surged forward, blades in both hands. It slashed left. He ducked. It twisted. He locked its wrist, snapped it backwards, drove a knife into its throat. Still not enough. The thing collapsed into smoke, then reformed behind him. Its claws punched into his armor, tearing cables. Sparks rained. Blood spilled. Ava's pod pinged. She was watching. He had no time. He grabbed a flare from his belt, cracked it, and shoved it into the beast's chest. Light exploded. The creature screamed like a dying god and dissolved into the air, melting through the bulkhead like vapor. Reeve collapsed to one knee, chest heaving, armor cracked, pain creeping. He crawled to Ava's pod and unlatched it. She looked up at him, eyes wide. Was that a bad guy? The worst kind, he muttered. Will it come back? Reeve paused, then looked into the stars, jaw clenched. Yes. They didn't stay. The shuttle was unsalvageable. Reeve rerouted emergency systems, set the core to self-destruct, and launched the pod. Seconds later, a fireball lit the void behind them, scattering the remains of the mimic creature across the debris field. They drifted for hours in silence. Then came the light of a scavenger ship, old Earth tech, rusted but functional. The pilot, a grizzled ex-marine named Cal Thorne, pulled them aboard. He didn't ask for a name. Didn't need to. He looked at Reeve, looked at the weapons, the blood, the girl. and nodded, figured the war wasn't over yet. They set course for the Outer Rim, an old moon base buried deep in the rock of Vornak II. Cal's base. Off-grid, no Dominion sensors. Full armory. Reeve spent the next 3 days rebuilding. Training Ava. Preparing. She was young, but shot faster than any child he'd seen. By the end of day 4, she could reload a rifle blindfolded. Day 5, she learned hand-to-hand. Day 6, she learned why. "I don't want to be scared anymore," she said. "You won't be," Reeve told her, "but I want them to be." He smiled at that. She was his daughter, after all. On the 7th day, the skies broke. A Dominion fleet, 12 ships strong, descended over Vornak like a steel storm, not to capture, not to kill, but to burn it out. General Zareth himself led the charge, standing aboard the command ship Vigilant Hammer, watching the moon's surface crack under bombardment, until a single heat signature launched from the surface. A pod.a decoy.no escaped, just a message that IT crashed into his bridge, detonated.emp boast. Systems offline. Then came the voice across every ship, every intercom, every frequency. "You missed us. Now it's our turn." Reeve was aboard, and he wasn't alone. Ava moved like a ghost through the lower decks, smaller than the cameras could track, planting charges with the precision of a surgeon. Reeve carved a path from engineering to the bridge, his blades flashing like lightning, never stopping, never hesitating. The Dominion fought hard. They died harder. Zareth waited, gun in hand, armor sealed. And when Reeve reached the bridge, blood-soaked, limping, eyes glowing through the cracked visor, Zareth didn't beg. He simply said, "You think you won." Reeve tilted his head. "This isn't a war." He raised his blade. "It's a warning." The strike was final, brutal, and absolute. Zareth's body hit the floor, his head still trying to form a last word as the lights in the ship died. Above Vornak II, the Dominion fleet went dark, one ship at a time, like lights being snuffed by hand. And across the galaxy, in secret holes and high towers, the word spread like plague. James Reeve has a daughter, and is training her run. The galaxy slept uneasily. Worlds whispered in static and silence, waiting for a shadow that never came. The Dominion collapsed inward, folding its wings over burning planets and shattered moons. Entire fleets vanished into cold space, officers erasing their own names from the archives just to avoid association. Recruiting centers were left abandoned. Bounties were quietly deleted. Transmission logs were wiped clean, not because the war was over, but because he was still alive. And they knew now. You didn't kill James Reeve. You just delayed your funeral. In the hollow orbit of Zentra Prime, the Dominion's last fortress spun in isolation. The Apex Citadel, a kilometer of armor and dread, wrapped in plasma shielding and guarded by an AI said to have eaten its creators. It was the last throne, the final command, and the man seated there, the new High Executor, Lord Graven, believed he was untouchable. He had grown up on war stories, had heard of Reeve, yes, like one hears of devils and ghosts. But Graven was raised on power, on blood, on the belief that legends fade and empires do not. That belief ended in 4 seconds, the moment the lights went black. Not flickered, not dimmed, but died, as if the ship itself had gasped its last breath. Sirens failed, guns jammed, doors refused to open, then ripped themselves off their hinges. Graven rose from his throne, his fingers clawing for the emergency override. And then it was cold, too cold, breath fogged, metal groaned, and something moved in the darkness, slow and deliberate, like it knew where every vein in the ship ran. Graven turned and saw her, not him. The girl, Ava, 15 now, taller, dressed in black combat rig, no insignia, twin pistols strapped low and a knife gleaming from her wrist guard. Her eyes were calm, too calm. Graven snarled, "You're just a child." She didn't speak, didn't blink. She fired. The bullet didn't kill him. Not yet. It tore through his shoulder, spun him against the throne, and pinned him there like a roach on display. Then the shadows moved behind her. He was there, older, slower, but no less lethal. James Reeve walked forward in silence, eyes locked on the High Executor, blood already drying on his armor from the 40 corpses left in the lower decks. He didn't raise his gun, didn't rush. He let Graven see it coming. "You think this ends something?" Graven hissed, laughing despite the blood bubbling in his lungs. "You think we were the worst? The galaxy's full of men worse than us." Reeve stepped forward, knife sliding from its sheath. "I'm counting on it." He shoved the blade into Graven's chest. Not a killing strike, but surgical. Measured. Long. It was a wound designed not to end life, but to extend pain. Graven howled, kicking, struggling, his fingers clawing at Reeve's arms like he could somehow undo what was already done. "I remember your voice," Reeve murmured. "You gave the order to take her. You signed the death certs. You told your men to make it look accidental." Graven coughed. I didn't think you were real." Ava walked forward. "No," she whispered. "You just didn't think we'd come back." And she pressed a charge to the throne's base. Time to leave. The Citadel's heart ruptured 5 minutes later. A chain reaction of internal detonations sliced through the mainframe, melting the AI into slag, and sending debris scattering into Zentra's orbit like falling teeth. From a distance, it looked like a star giving up on burning. In the days that followed, no retaliation came. There were none left to order it. Across the known systems, former Dominion worlds began broadcasting a signal, a simple one. No flags, no threats, just a phrase carved into every frequency. "Don't touch what's his." Reeve and Ava vanished. Some said they went into deep space, beyond the mapped sectors, into the ghost systems where no sun shines. Others believed they returned to Earth, hidden beneath the old seal black sites, buried under 1,000 meters of rock and oath. But the truth was more quiet, more intentional. On the edge of the Aelio's drift, on a nameless moon covered in perpetual dusk, a cabin sat nestled between jagged stone ridges and a frozen lake. It had no scanners, no defenses, just a door and a garden. Ava knelt beside it now, tending the roots of a plant she didn't know the name of. She wasn't a soldier today, just a girl in a quiet place, skin smudged with dirt and sunlight. Behind her, Reeve carved wood with a blade he hadn't used for killing in years. He wore no armor, just silence. The war had not ended. It never would. But for once, they'd stolen a piece of peace. Ava looked up. "Do you think they'll try again?" Reeve didn't answer right away. "Then, if they do, we bury them deeper." She smiled. Not the smile of innocence, but of confidence. A storm once, a tempest now. Suddenly, from over the ridge, a shimmer of light flickered. Small, intentional. Not a star, not random. A probe. Reeve stood without a word. Ava rose beside him. The beacon came closer, soft, gentle, scanning. No weapons, just a signal. They waited. It stopped 10 meters away and projected a figure, holographic, flickering, old Earth tech. The image was of a woman in admiral stripes, face guard, eyes sharp, Earth Alliance insignia. "My name is Admiral Solon," she said. "If this message reaches you, know we are not enemies. We don't want the girl. We don't want the man. We want the ghost you left behind." Reeve narrowed his eyes. "I was tasked to kill you once," Solon's recording continued. "I refused. I knew it then. I know it now." The signal distorted briefly, then resumed. "War is coming. Real war. Beyond Dominion. Beyond politics. Something ancient has woken beyond the rift. We'll fight if we must, but we won't survive it without you." Then the image faded. Silence returned. Ava turned to her father. "We could ignore it." "We could," he said. She watched the sky, then nodded. "But we won't." Reeve looked down at the dirt on her hands, the knife on her hip, the weight she now carried so easily. Not a child. Not anymore. He nodded once. "Pack your gear." She smiled. "Already did." The next morning, the stars bent, and the Reapers returned, not to end the world, but to save the last ones worth fighting for.